Hey everybody, I'm here today to talk to you about the 7 best car buying tips. In this video, I'll be going over what I consider to be the 7 best tips for buying a car. Now let's get right to it. These tips will apply to pretty much every car purchase that you can potentially make. So let's get right into the tips. Tip number 1 is to figure out your budget. Now many people make the mistake of determining their budget once they've decided on a car. And that's not a good thing, because you shouldn't be looking at cars, choosing one, and then saying, yeah, I guess it meets my budget. Before you even consider any individual cars, look at your finances, because one of the positions that I'm sure you don't want to be in is to drive a car that you love but have a financial status that you hate. So with that being said, look at your financial situation, figure out your budget, and use that budget to guide your car decision, okay? So number 1 is figure out your budget. Now also, within your budget, you want to make sure that you leave a little bit of room for what I like to call contingency. And that is room for either, paying for additional stuff with the car, like insurance, gas, oil changes and so forth, like the maintenance stuff, or room if you're getting a used car for any potential repairs that might be needed to the car. So if your budget is $30,000, you might want to actually only look at a car for like $27,000 or $28,000, so you leave a little bit of extra money for all of that extra stuff. All right, so that's tip number 1. Figure out your budget and use it accordingly. Tip number 2 is new or used. Decide on whether you want a new or used car and be firm with that decision. When I was purchasing my first car, I was like, I might get a new car for this price, or I might get a used car that has a higher value but costs the same amount used. So I might get a new car for, let's say, $30,000, or I can get a used car for $30,000 that when that used car was new, it costs $40,000. So it wasn't a good way to think about it. I would recommend making a firm decision, okay? Whether it's new or used, decide on one of them. If you want to buy a new car, make sure that you're buying a new car. If you want to buy a used car, make sure that you're buying a used car. And either one is okay, but make sure that you're deciding on one of those statuses, okay? The third car buying tip is to figure out whether you want to buy it outright, finance, or lease. Now those are basically the 3 main ways that you can pay for a car, okay? Buying it outright is just walking to the dealership with the amount of money and buying the car. No terms, no loans, nothing like that. Just buying the car. If the car costs $30,000, you walk in and you pay $30,000, with a check or whatever the case is for the car. Now, financing is when you purchase the car to own, but over a period of time. So for instance, if the car costs $30,000 and you don't have the $30,000 right there, or you don't want to spend the $30,000 like that, you can finance it, meaning you can pay for the $30,000 over 5 years, 6 years, 3 years, however long you decide on with the car loan. Leasing, on the other hand, is basically when you are, for lack of better terms, using the car, you're paying for it, but not to own it. So leasing will oftentimes result in the cheapest car payments, but you never actually own the car. So when you lease the car, it's almost like you're borrowing it and you're paying it. It's almost like you're renting the car, for lack of better terms. You're using the car and you're paying for it, but you're not paying for it with the intention of keeping it. Now you can also lease a car, and then there's a buyback option, which is when you lease it, it's like you rent it for however many years, let's say 3 years, and then you can purchase it after. You have the option to purchase it after. There are a few different options, but just know what you want to do before you walk into that dealership, because it's really easy to look at the different car payments and be persuaded to one or the other, especially to do something that you don't want to do just because the car payment is different. So know what you want before you walk in. Tip number 4 for buying a car is to negotiate the price. Almost all cars are priced slightly higher than the dealership wants to sell them for, and that's because the maximum amount of profit is incorporated into that price. So let's just say that a dealership buys a car, so they have an invoice price for $30,000. They're gonna price the car, let's say, at like $34,000, because they know that if someone walks in there and pays face value for the car, that's sort of the maximum amount of profit that they're gonna make, balanced with a price that the car will sell at, okay? So with that being said, you don't want the dealership to just make the maximum amount of profit. You don't want them to just take that money out of your pocket. You obviously want them to make some profit because it's a business and they need to continue in business, so you want them to make some money, but you want to sort of split the profit. Meaning if the car has a sticker price for you at $34,000, then you want to negotiate that price, okay? You want to negotiate it down. Now, there are some dealerships that price the cars so low and they say it's non-negotiable. This is the price of the car, it's non-negotiable, and we price them so low that it's not meant for negotiation. They just want to make a set amount of money, a low amount of profit on every single car, and they want volume. So there are dealerships like that, but most dealerships will allow you to negotiate the price, okay? So that's tip number 4. Tip number 5 is to negotiate some extras. So even once you finish negotiating the price, you can negotiate some extra stuff. Let's say the car had a face value of $34,000 and you brought it down to $32,000, and you're ready to buy it. Ask for some winter mats, ask for some locking nuts, ask for this, ask for some tints, ask for 3 free oil changes. Just trying to negotiate some extras, because even when the dealership has come down to its lowest price, you can still get some extra stuff, because sometimes they have a set of winter mats that have been lying around in the back storage room for like 4 years, and they know they're probably not going to sell, so they might as well make you happy and give you the winter mats as part of the deal. Sometimes they have an extra set of locking nuts that someone returned, of wheel lock nuts that someone returned, and the package is already open, so they can't resell them, so they might as well give them to you. There are many situations in which you can get some extras, and I would recommend negotiating some extras once you finish negotiating the lowest possible price. All right, tip number 6, look at similar cars. Now, if you want to buy a car, okay, then I know you might want a certain car, I know you might have a dream car, but I would recommend looking at similar cars, okay? And that's because you really want to know that you want that specific car. So let's say I want this make and this model. I love this make and model of the car. I know I want it. If I really am in love with that car, if I really like that car that much, then guess what? Looking at other similar cars will still allow me to like that car even more. So with that being said, don't be afraid to look at similar cars. Don't be afraid of finding something else that you like. Look at the car that you really want, and then look at similar cars. And it's just a good way to compare them. And last but not least, tip number 7 for buying a car is to take an in-depth test drive, and even multiple test drives. So what you want to do is test drive the car, whether it's new or used. You want to get a feel for the car, because the car might look good, the stats might be great, but then when you drive it, if it's a used car, maybe there's some problems with it that you didn't know about. And if it's a new car, maybe it just doesn't drive the way that you want it to drive. Excuse me. So with that being said, I should drink some water. So with that being said, I would recommend taking an in-depth test drive. And not only one, I would recommend taking an in-depth test drive on one day, going home, thinking about it, and then taking another in-depth test drive the next day, or a few days later, or a week later, just to reinforce that decision. Once again, don't be afraid of doing a test drive more than once. Number one, the dealership should be happy that you're test driving it more than once, because you're going to probably buy the car. But number 2, it should just reinforce it. If you really like the car, if you're really happy with it, taking 2 or 3 test drives should just reinforce that feeling of, I love this car, I really want to buy it. And that's basically it. In this video, I've gone over the 7 best car buying tips, what I consider to be the 7 best car buying tips. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. Let me know what you think down below as a comment. What are some other car buying tips that you would recommend to someone that's buying a car? Let me know as a comment down below, and of course, be sure to subscribe for more great car and driving videos just like this one. And that's all I have for you today. Thanks for watching.